It's fair to say, I believe, that you really do earn your money if you work for either Meghan or Harry. I mean, we've seen an influx of staff go through that revolving door. And it's very difficult because clearly there are two people there and two different personalities. It's very, very clear when you look at all the publicity in the press and the negative headlines that Diva Duchess in high heels or difficult Diva Duchess, whatever. Meghan has never really managed anything other than herself. She's managed to, of course, procure her status in life by marrying rich. Let's not forget that Meghan Markle did not get to where she is really through sheer talent, or indeed, some people might say, being a nice person. The problem that you've got with Meghan right now is, well, it's the history. But really, it's her sort of, well, mantra of saying to everybody that she is authentic, she is real, and, you know, she does hurt. Forgetting, of course, all the people that she's cast aside, including her abhorrent, well, treatment, in my opinion, of our late and wonderful monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. You can't really unsee that once you've seen it. That particular curtsy on that documentary said everything to me. It wasn't funny. It was basically saying, I'm mocking your tradition and what it's all about. Meanwhile, her husband sat next to her and wanted to say something. You could see it in his eyes, but dare not. So under the thumb is he. But what's interesting is, on his recent return back here to the United Kingdom, they have still bigger ideas. And more importantly, the thing for Harry is, he truly believes that the monarchy need him and his wife. Oh yes, do join me for a brand new episode of By Royal Appointment. Lovely to see you, chums. Thank you so much as ever for your time today. And as ever, welcome one and all brand new subscribers. Thank you for choosing this channel. It means a lot. We're a friendly bunch. Oh yes. And I know we're all busy, so when I make these videos, I do try. You know, you get these people who put the sort of comments, as you know, so we'll have a nice wave. You get these people who put in the comments, you know, get to the point. We're a friendly group. I like to share things with you. I like reading back what you share with me. Whether you say I saw Danny Kaye in a film or, you know, saw him live or something. That's what it's about. It's a community and we're here to help each other, to build friendships and to not feel so alone if that's the case. And I know a lot of people, as I've said to you before, are. So people really need to think a little bit more about, well, not themselves, but other people. You get the picture. But as ever, it's always about, well, what's really going on in the royal world. Now, as you know, Prince William has been incredibly busy this week with a lot of his individual projects. And I feel sorry for him on a serious note, because clearly, as I mentioned in a previous By Royal Appointment, you know, mainstream media have got into bed with these two. We're talking about Harry and Meghan. Now, the bit I find very, very strange with the mainstream media is the fact that, you know, when you dig a little bit deeper, many of them have some rather strange connections. Oh yes, and the darker side to it all is this, that suddenly, you know, Harry and Meghan, who decided that they didn't need the media and they were going to, you know, grassroots journalists, if you remember, they would pick and choose who they were going to speak to. Well, suddenly they have a change of heart because, well, quite frankly, nobody was really interested. The thing that sold and still sells is royal gossip. It's sold for hundreds of years, you know. It doesn't matter whether you're Henry VIII, Anne Boleyn, whatever. They were as big a stories as what we're covering today. If you look back in the journals, you will find that. And when you look further, say, you know, in more recent times, the 1800s, the 1900s, magazines like Punch relished in things like King George's madness and literally cartoons showing him to be, well, you know, a philanderer, a womanizer. Even, of course, the brilliant Edward VII, who I had a lot of time for. Well, they really went after him, and that was the burgeoning tabloid era. So, of course, Meghan and Harry thought they could control this. This was going to be the narrative. They knew what they were doing, but clearly they didn't. Now, what's happened, as I mentioned previously, is they've got a brand new communications team. And that communications team really, in many respects, are a strange bunch of people because they're very good, I would say, at celebrity marketing. Now, celebrity marketing is totally different to dealing with royals. Celebrity marketing is normally desperate people who've got a film, a record, whatever, and they want to sell it. And I don't mean that in a nasty way, desperate, but, you know, you're fighting in a crowded corner to be seen. So if you're a pop star that's had hits for 30 years, I don't know, like Kylie or Madonna, it gets a lot harder to get radio play, to get noticed, and what magazines can you go in, where can you appear, do you team up with somebody younger? This is the battle that's happening. this is the battle that's happening for Meghan and Harry. Because, she at 44 can no longer play the gushing girl next door. Acting roles would be now more character-based. But of course, certain individuals want to remain forever young. Now, I don't know about you, but I think the lighting, the colorization on that Netflix show does make Meghan look simply terrific. I mean, there's no two ways about it, whether you're a fan of hers or not. There's a lot of post-production on that particular show, no doubt driving up the cost. But here's where it gets interesting, you see, because as Prince Harry returned back to the United Kingdom, he had one real thing on his mind, a project that he really needed to get pushed forward, and basically sort of making sure that he got His Majesty the King on side. Now, we all know the story about how long he was in situ with His Majesty the King. That wasn't the imperative part of the meeting. That wasn't necessary. What was necessary was the public knowing. And this was the job done very expertly, in my opinion, by their new team. But what did it really entail behind palace doors? Well, this. Long-term bigger issues that Prince Harry truly had with senior members of the British monarchy. Everything from his father to Queen Camilla to the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh. Apparently, according to a very well-placed source, Harry could not understand why nobody could see the value of this. That's right, his wife, Meghan Markle. And he put this into words, if you remember, on that ITV African documentary. She did a terrific job. Nobody thanked them when they returned. She took to it like a duck to water, that sort of stuff. And then what we really found out was what went on behind the scenes. Meghan made some of the staff lives hell, apparently, and according, of course, to documents out there. But that was just brushed over because she was so good at this job that the British monarchy desperately needed her. And that was the rhetoric, really, that Harry perpetuated through the early stages, that, well, there's a new star in town now, and we are going to be it. Behind the scenes, very cleverly, in my opinion, Meghan Markle perpetuated that myth with Harry. She worked him like a finely tuned sort of tin of sardines, peeling back each layer each time she needed to reveal a little bit more, playing the vulnerable card, like she felt very ill, she felt very alone, they'd taken her passport from her, her car keys. You could not have executed a better sob story. And some people suggest that Prince Harry fell for it hook, line and sinker. It's the old chestnut, isn't it? But you see, what Harry really thought was, and truly believed, and that's why he pushed ahead, was that when they said they were going to leave, well, actually, they wouldn't let them leave, would they? They were too valuable to the British monarchy. What we found out, according to sources, was that the Queen wasn't exactly a huge fan of Meghan Markle. Now, and this came from an excellent source, a woman that the Queen would have been very revealing with. The moment of clarity, if you like, the moment where she could sit and have a cup of tea with someone and say, you know what, this is not working out to the best of what I thought. But I've always believed that Her Majesty the Queen tried her very best to be warm, welcoming, and really tried to get Meghan involved in the family. But this truly wasn't enough, you see, because they really wanted the same privileges, the same respect, the same clothes, designer, hair, everything. Meghan wanted what Catherine had. In fact, Meghan, according to a source, was absolutely enamoured with the poise, grace and elegance that Catherine, the Princess of Wales, has. And it's a sort of thing that you either have it, if I'm really honest, or you don't. It's a bit like star power. There's certain people that come on a stage and you go, wow, they're worth watching, but you don't know why. It's the indefinable thing. Whenever you see Catherine, you can't stop but watch her because there's something, and I'm not being gushy. There is something. I think it's because she comes out and she sort of emanates warmth and she's kind, and you can see that. You can't manufacture that. But of course, Meghan, being an actress, felt that she could. She felt she'd done well on those minuscule tours, and she didn't understand why people were not being a lot kinder to her. You understand? Now, behind the scenes this week, when Harry turned up, the bigger issue really was that, Harry came with an idea, a plot, a cap in hand. It was all about the initiation of, well, I'd like to see how you're getting on. And can I just say here and now, I think it takes a lot of credit to His Majesty the King to even want to see his youngest son, given what he put him through, his wife, Queen Camilla, and the deplorable way that he described certain family members. But this was, again, glimpsed away in that BBC interview by Harry as, well, I'm sure there's some people that won't want to see me. I mean, so what, we all say these things. They're in print, they're documented. It isn't an argument within the four walls, and it's in the public domain. So that's very hard to twist that back. But as I said, the publicity people behind Harry and Meghan have worked overtime. And for celebrities, they've done a good job. But you see, what I was told behind the scenes of that particular meeting, well, Harry still is very hopeful for a royal return, but not in the way that you would think. You see, even Harry knows, and he's woken up at least to this point, that his wife would not be welcome here in the United Kingdom. Simply because, she rubs people up the wrong way, and some people might suggest that she doesn't really have the heart in it. But you see, what Meghan wants to do is still remain in California, being a mom, as she points out, of the dukedom, all of those things, very, very difficult and hard to swallow. But the bottom line is the royal success still rubs off on her. And Harry's plan, and this is the bigger plan, was that he would like to go back to royal duties, which he demonstrated, some people might say, effortlessly when he turned back here to the United Kingdom. No dramas, no big kickoffs. Suddenly there he is presenting checks, saying there's money, etc., and doing what royals do, a cosplaying royal tour. Now his idea is, well, how about that he just has the, half in, not the wife. That's the bigger story. And what was interesting about this is, you see, it works very well for them, doesn't it? Because suddenly, if Harry's doing a charitable event, following, say, the collapse of Centre Barley or all that sort of stuff, he has that connection. So if he turns up over here representing the monarchy on their behalf for a big charitable event, that gets beamed around the world. And the reflection also goes back on Meghan Markle. You see how this works now. So they've rethought this strategy and said, well, look, clearly Meghan doesn't really want to return back to the United Kingdom. She certainly doesn't want to be schlepping it around Rotherham on a wet Wednesday. But, maybe Harry could do it. Now, some people might say, me included, that absolutely he's willing to do anything for this woman to protect his marriage, to keep the profile up there, whatever it takes. I believe, though, the other side of it is that Prince Harry actually likes that sort of life. He misses it in some respects, and you can understand it. I mean, it's a life that he knows. It's not very difficult for him because he was brought up with it, shown mainly by his late mother, Diana, Princess of Wales. But consequently, what you've got, it makes it very fruitful, doesn't it? So if Harry says, we could come back and do this, how about that? That is what was on the table. But what was the response? It all seemed to have gone well with Prince Harry's return back here to the United Kingdom. But there was a sort of backstory that in fact his wife, Meghan Markle, knew simply could happen. Really from the very off at the start of their relationship, she's controlled everything. And I think, from a personal aspect, that Harry likes this. I think he likes the fact that there's a mother figure who presents a meal to him, and all he really has to do is cough up the money to live the way that they want. And I'm sort of paraphrasing, but you get the picture. A lot of men don't mind that, they simply think, well, they're going to look after me and I can be the king of the castle. Meghan's been very clever at making Harry look like the king of the castle. In fact, he's used her phrases as slaying the dragons when people have dared to attack them in the media, the sort of thing. And the problem really then is, now, how do you continue to do that? Now, once you let grip and you lose the grip of the person that some people might suggest you have a lot of control over, then you really do have a problem. And this is now the problem, the huge problem for Meghan Markle. You see, upon Harry's return back here, unlike the last time, and being very carefully groomed and very carefully sort of nurtured into what he was supposed to do and how he was supposed to do it, this has been deemed as something of a success. And as I pointed out, in many respects, he ticked a lot of boxes. They got the media on side and suddenly, he's getting better coverage. But you can't hide the lack of, real fan support. But you see, Harry then, as we now know, decided to pop off to Ukraine. And what was interesting was the phrase of that. He checked with his wife and the government. Right? Not the government and his wife. Again, really telling as to who wears the trousers in that particular relationship. Again, you have to say that's his prerogative. He has two small children, his children, and naturally doesn't want to fall into any danger. You see how this works. But on a bigger scale, the problem that you have really is that Harry has now had a taste of life and what it could be and what it should have been if Meghan's plan had gone to plan. The Megxit plan, right? The thing where she was going to take control, look after everything, do everything, and everything was going to be perfect. They were going to have a life what they wanted, you know, the life that you should lead. That she pointed out very, very, well, acutely on the Oprah Winfrey interview. If you want to know her plan, it's all there laid out before you. She just doesn't necessarily mask it very well. And the problem now that you have, as I say, is that Harry likes being back in Britain. He, I know, has enjoyed this particular stint. Some people might say, well, the stint's really been enjoyable because finally he's free. You know, he doesn't have to kowtow, open doors, stand back, take pictures, gosh, say how marvellous it was, even when he knows, like the rest of us, he's heard the soap story a million times, he has to go along with it because this is what happens when you marry a celebrity. And the problem is, and I say that term loosely, clearly, but you have to really pander to their ego, their needs, and everything has to circle around them. The trouble is, when one of you is more famous, and we've seen this time and time again with celebrities, well, then the egos start to rear their ugly head. And what Harry's really enjoyed is that actually it's the, you know, the people that have been cheering for him, the people that look delighted to see him. He's got a chance to speak. He has a chance to shine on his own, back in his home country. Now, he's been letting it be known by all of those media contacts that they've now cemented a deal with that he misses Britain. He's made some mistakes and he definitely wants to forge a bond and move back and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, it's all playing out very nicely, very well. The biggest sticking point is this. He married her. She doesn't want to come back. No intention, doesn't really get it. The only way that Meghan would want to come back, and this is an impossibility, is again, it goes back to the public apology. And she knows that that's not going to happen. So without that, she's got her get out clause. Now, at some point, she may have to relinquish, as she's done with her husband, Prince Harry, the opportunity to let him free, to be available, as it were, and go back to his hometown, perhaps even taking one of the children. Never both, but one, right? And where this is interesting is, you see, obviously, it can benefit her. And this is what Harry has realised. But you see, Harry has a bigger picture. His dream still is to have a place here, to relocate here at some point so that his children, you know, can experience the life that he knows, the British way of life. When he said in the NBC interview that California was his home, 18 months plus on, it's a different home. You know, he's bored. There he is surfing every day, walking, hiking, riding his bicycle. He has nothing to do. What she's gone and done over here, whether she admits it or not, is let Harry see, in fact, that he could be useful. He could do something. He doesn't just have to be hanging around the set of a Netflix rented house waiting for her to stir a pot of jam and wheel him in for the celebrity that he is. He realises he could have some independence. And this is what's truly, many people inside believe, is going to fracture the relationship, because either if he presents it to her that they could make more money, they could have more fame, it could open more doors, it would be easier for them if they had a bit of a better platform, a world stage, readdress the website issue, make out that of course she's terrific, you get the picture. All Meghan's now got to look forward to is another disaster looming. And that disaster is a forthcoming Christmas show. Yes, that Christmas special for Netflix. But more importantly for Harry, he's now had a taste of a medicine that he wouldn't mind having another spoon of. And the problem, of course, for Meghan is she doesn't want to open the kitchen cabinet to make sure he has another opportunity. So where did he go from here? Well, this is where it gets really interesting, because now what we really have from Meghan and Harry and their new team is the countdown as to how they're going to rehabilitate Prince Harry. And we've seen this, haven't we, by getting in cahoots with all the tabloid newspapers over here. They're gushing things about the old Harry and all of that sort of stuff. And I told you recently that even the hotel that he attended with the Wellchild Awards, which is the Royal Lancaster Hotel at Lancaster Gate, just on the sort of corner really of Marble Arch, etc. Well, what was interesting there was suddenly, apparently, according to sources, well, Harry had a room there. Well, he stayed there, here in the UK. And what's interesting about that is when you think about it, what you sort of spurn the royal palace to stay in a 4-star hotel in the corner of Marble Arch. One suspects that actually what that really is a contra deal to help promote where the Well Child Awards is, and of course it's a charitable trust, so consequently one might suggest, and as ever I have to say allegedly, that there's some kind of deal there, a bit of publicity for the hotel. It's very nice, it's very spacious and very expensive, but not exactly the sort of super deluxe hotel that one might expect, say like the Ritz, Claridge's, the Mayfair, the Connaught. You get the picture. It's certainly a little come down if Markle was to return back here to the United Kingdom. You make your own tea and coffee in the room. You get the picture. Now, when this goes further down, and this is where this gets really interesting, and of course the mainstream media won't really want to alert you to this part of the story, is really the idea now is to sort of come up with positivity. Now, the problem that you've got is, as we know, Meghan's big sort of Norma Desmond comeback, whatever you want to call it, with her, as ever thing, it's just an absolute tank. But you see, as I said, she's very, very clever at manipulation. And this has reinvigorated slight interest into the streaming giant Netflix. This is because, once again, not her, but her husband becomes a person of interest to the company. You see, Meghan, because she doesn't play these things well, if she'd have gone along with Harry to come back here to the United Kingdom for the charitable stuff, even dashing over perhaps to Ukraine, a la Marilyn Monroe in Korea or something like that, entertaining, whatever, well, that would have really ignited their interest. But, she's a busy mom looking after 2 children, Harry's children, so you understand she doesn't really have the time. Also interviewing for a nanny. Tricky that, when you're that busy. And of course, no doubt, topping up jars of flour sprinkles and all that sort of stuff. But on a more serious note, they now are more interested because, once again, he's made a connection. It's always been about Harry, and everybody knows this. Now, the Christmas special, which has been, looming, I told you that earlier this week they had a sort of an initial meeting as to the plot, the idea. All of that's now been thrown out of the window because obviously they've got bigger meat now to put in the oven, as it were. What's fascinating here is that you see the idea really, and this is a very initial sort of idea, is to make sure that this centres upon, well, family. Well, not hers, obviously. No. She's still battling in the court of law with her half-sister Samantha and simply doesn't speak to her father or indeed her half-brother. But that's not the point. It's not really about family. It's about selling billions of pounds of jam and wine and, crepes and stuff like that. But the idea really will be to sort of focus that back on. Maybe now even talk about her first royal Christmas and what an honour it was to be invited by the late Queen, piling on this sort of rhetoric of, well, look, I may have made some mistakes there with the fake curtsy and the disrespect and all of the things that apparently, that she's gone through. This is the slow climb back, chums. Trust me, this is the plan. Now, as I've said many times, these are celebrity publicists. This is what they do. They rehabilitate people and they have to try and get the public to think, oh, right, maybe they're not as bad. Maybe, oh, it's a terrible press that wrote these things, But the problem is in the modern day age of the digital world, it's there in black and white. Now, we can't pull up the full interview, of course, of Oprah Winfrey because she's made sure with her superpower and billions that YouTube will not put that up. She owns that, you see, so the clips very quickly get taken down. But people are very, very savvy, and the clips are out there. And of course, they will still resonate with the Prince and Princess of Wales. Hence the reason, of course, Prince William didn't want anything to do with Harry upon his return. And naturally, Princess Catherine kept herself busy. I feel a bit sorry for her because obviously, she's a kind-hearted soul and suddenly trapped in the middle of a family feud. Naturally, her allegiance is with her husband, the 3 children, and His Majesty the King and Queen Camilla. But she's still in the middle. And I think that she probably would think, I could have solved this. I think she could have done. But of course, she's up against somebody like Markle and she doesn't want it solved. You see, this is the thing. What Meghan likes is a soap opera that keeps her in the limelight, basically focusing on her. So as we career towards Christmas now and the down period of, October, November, and Meghan will have that tease, her real battle is making sure that she can wipe off Catherine with her Christmas Carol concert, which is on the beleaguered ITV channel, right? They are literally, I mean, they're praying that, of course, Catherine will still stay with them and not go with the streaming giant, because they desperately need that cachet, that superpower, the glamour. And it is a wonderful sort of concert that we all enjoy over here in the United Kingdom. It's really the start of our Christmas. But Meghan and her team believe that once she's launched her Christmas special, this could become an annual event. But trust me, behind the scenes, the idea is simply this. And this again is the manipulation of their team. You see, you'll see them opening Christmas cards. And the bottom line is, people say, well, how do you know that? Let me tell you, the staff who are working on this particular project, I know. So you'll see them opening cards. There'll be a flash perhaps to a previous Christmas card that they received when they were working roles, maybe from the Queen, you know, misty-eyed Meghan looking at it. Nowhere to be seen, of course, a Christmas card from a father or anything like that. And perhaps you might even see more than the back of the heads of the children, excitedly unwrapping presents. Hopefully not flower sprinkles, but you get the picture. They're working on this to make sure that this is the rehabilitation, so that as they go into 2026, Meghan, of course, can carry on being the entrepreneur that she truly wants to become, a billionaire, a billionairess, whatever you want to call it. And then, of course, Harry can, well, keep yourself busy, occupied, perhaps popping back and forth to help with royal duties. That's the plan. That's exactly the idea that they're trying to sell into the mainstream media. The only real problem that you have with all of this, well, it's you. That's right, the chums and me. We're the problem. Oh, absolutely. Make no mistake, chums. You see, we're the problem because if we don't buy into it, well, they can carry on regardless. But of course, then you get scenes what you saw with Harry in Nottingham. And of course, they run the risk at turning up at royal events. Well, not Meghan, because she'll never turn up at any, but Harry, and then run the risk of boos. You see, those were very controlled events that we saw earlier this week. Now, of course, as he gets further and further in, and there are plans yet again for him to return back before Christmas, well, how will that fare? And more importantly, can they really handpick more charitable events, making sure the anti-media, that's what they call us, that, well, you know, if we're not that positive, could we be controlled? As ever, it's a developing story. And as ever, when I know more, you'll know more. And thank you for watching this latest episode of By Royal Appointment. Now, as I often say, chums, until next time, take care of yourselves.